This meeting is called to order in accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act. Notice of this meeting was provided to the Home News Tribune, the Star Ledger, the Highland Park Planet on January 8, 2025, and was posted on Borough Hall website at www.hbborough.com and on the bulletin board of Borough Hall, 221 South Fifth Avenue in Highland Park, New Jersey, and has remained continuously posted as required by law. Fire exits are to my right and left of council chambers. Yes, can you lead us on the pledge of allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah. So I always say we
Okay, roll call.
Mayor Foster,
Yes.
Councilmember George,
here.
Councilmember Hale,
Yes.
Councilmember Hirsch,
Here.
Council President Kim Cho Han,
Here.
Councilmember Pistonik,
Here.
Councilmember Vargas,
Here.
Borough Attorney Renaud,
Here.
Borough Administrator Rivera,
Here.
Borough Planner Chris
Here.
Costanza.
Okay, tonight is a work session and discussion items is going to be 332 Raritan Avenue in the former Rite Aid. It's 420 to 424 redevelopment plan amendment. And I'm going to ask Terry to take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, everybody. It's a redevelopment-esque themed meeting tonight.
Very much so.
Sorry in advance if I do too much talk. But the first item on the agenda is 332 Raritan Avenue, the former Rite Aid, although it looks like a Rite Aid still. And what I wanted to try to discuss is, because we know this is a really important site in town for us, and that's a large vacancy to have in town. So I want to kind of go over where we are and a recommendation that we have in terms of kind of things we can do to try to address the site. So just to kind of baseline as much for anybody who's listening at home, we're dealing with a 15,000 square foot former Rite Aid. 15,000 square foot is a large space in this day and age, especially in a downtown location like this. And this type of use, they're not really returning to spaces like this. And so I've done a little research on what's been happening, because Rite Aids have been closing since these Chapter 11 bankruptcies started a couple of years back. If you recall, we thought we were fortunate that we didn't get closed down in that first wave. And so they are kind of sitting out there on the market, both in New Jersey and elsewhere. So we want to be as proactive as we can about what we can do to try to kind of move things forward and not have a vacancy downtown any longer than is necessary. So I also took a kind of an assessment of what tools we have, just to be clear, looking at the redevelopment hat on for a minute. Just this is a little different than, for example, with the Super Fresh or what was this Stop and Shop situation. We decided to use the redevelopment law. We studied the site to see if it was determined to be an area in need of redevelopment. It met the criteria. Chris Costanza, our planner, did the study. It went to the planning board. We declared it an area in need. And then we kind of laid out some options for the property with the goal of getting a grocery store back. And fortunately, we were successful. We don't have the full redevelopment tool available on the Rite Aid site. There's a unique history here. It was in our 2005 redevelopment area and redevelopment plan. There is a downtown redevelopment plan that dates back to 2005. But at some point, I don't have the exact date, there were some negotiations between the borough and the Rite Aid, and it was agreed upon and settled that Rite Aid would be removed from the redevelopment area and the redevelopment plan. So the full suite of redevelopment tools are not available to bring to bear, like, for example, at the outmost, financial incentives like pilot agreements, things like that, not on the table at this time for this site. And Chris, not to put words in your mouth, but you might want to suggest, we did look at, would it meet the criteria right now? And I mean, what was your assessment of that?
Yeah, so to answer your question, yes, so back in 2005, it was declared an area need along with many other properties. It was in 2010, it's only a few years later that through litigation settlement, it was removed, so we lost that ability. But in 2016, we did the area-wide area in need of rehabilitation designation, which applies to all parcels in town, including Rite Aid. So under that rehabilitation route, we can still do a redevelopment plan.
Right, but you're
just not-
jumping ahead of me a little bit. I wanted to just, we don't know that the site as currently,
Right.
now that Rite Aid's out of the picture, I'm assuming the settlement agreement, but
In a perfect world, we would go back to studying the property and just a quick look at it. We don't think we'll have to wait several years before that could be possible. If you wait 2 years for vacancy to use criteria B, it'll have to be completely vacant land for 10 years to determine under criteria C, and then the issue of dilapidation, unwholesome working conditions, it's unlikely for a recently renovated building. So I think we're stuck not being able to use the redevelopment, the full suite of powers.
right. So just wanted to make that clear. It kind of differentiates it a little bit from what our past experience was with the loss of the grocery store. So just in terms of some of the research that I did, looking at what is happening to these Rite Aids, the types of uses that we're seeing, and I got this out of like some articles from CoStar, which is a big commercial brokerage, like Dollar Generals, Dollar Trees, Planet Fitness type businesses, and healthcare, urgent care uses. And actually, in talking this over with Chris recently, we were even discussing, Metuchen had that exact same thing. There was a CVS that closed in their downtown and it got converted to an urgent care. So those are, and if you could probably think, and I should mention daycare uses is somewhat a trend. And there is an example of one actually in,
Franklin.
I always want to call it Hamilton. It's on Hamilton Street in Franklin, is a Rite Aid converted to a grocery store. So grocery store into a daycare, excuse me. So the reason I even bring all that up is I wanted to look at, okay, what is permitted now under the underlying zoning for the site? Our central business district zoning, which is what this site is in, currently thinking about some of those other types of uses, doesn't permit medical office use, does not permit daycare use, amongst others. Also doesn't permit some kinds of entertainment uses, which might be something we'd like to see downtown. And as it happens, Chris and me and Rituja have been kind of looking at the CBD zoning kind of on a parallel track when this happened. So we kind of knew what was in, what wasn't. So right now, our underlying zoning doesn't really allow for those types of uses that we are seeing more commonly kind of come to term with Rite Aid conversions. One of the other challenges I wanted to make sure everybody was aware of is the cost to retrofit Rite Aids is sizable because they're very unique layouts. Especially if you want to divide it up, you have to put utilities on both sides of the building. So one of the challenges for the property owner is finding an end user that's valuable enough to warrant and want to make those kind of upgrades to the building. So just trying to give you a sense for kind of the issues that we're facing, trying to think about what could happen here. And I should mention that the underlying central business district zoning does allow for a mixed use building on this site as of right. But in my conversations with the property owner, which have been very frequent, they looked at that a while back, even before the closure, and they told me they needed financial, a pilot, some kind of thing to make the project pan out for them. True or not, we didn't vet that in any kind of serious way. But so right now, the sense I'm getting is that's not on the table in terms of a kind of a total kind of tear down and start over from scratch on the site, at least as far as the property owner is concerned. So I just wanted to kind of cover some of those things. So in looking at what the tools we do have, we still can, as Chris said, do a redevelopment plan for the site whereby we could think about some of these additional uses that we might want to allow in order to encourage reoccupancy of the building sooner than later. And so the other advantage of the way I look at this site, this is kind of an abnormal situation for our downtown, a 15,000 square foot site. And I think it's worthy of kind of study in this plan and consideration of plan, but it would also allow us to weave in, if we go to a redevelopment plan approach, the easement that we would like to connect the back of our parking area on South Third through to South Fourth, so that we could encourage that negotiation by creating additional valuable uses that the property owner would have access to. So there's a lot of kind of pieces on the board, but I guess where I've come to, and I think in talking with Chris, it's fair to say, where we've come to is we'd like to consider the potential of a redevelopment plan for the rated parcels, which I should tell you includes the building that fronts Raritan, but also all of the parking basically in the rear. In fact, parts of the parking that you might even think are borough parking lot are actually the Rite Aid parking lot. So where we would focus more on permitted uses and the creation of the easement. With that, I want to kind of have Chris talk a little bit about some of what we're thinking in terms of the zoning that we think might make sense for the types of uses, but also some of the provisions that we wanted to build in to make sure it maintains the frontage on Raritan and things like that.
So this will be a redevelopment plan that would provide for, as the base zoning, a lot of the uses that we were used in the downtown tracks, the kind of modern updated uses for downtown, but to use overlay zoning to allow for really expanding the uses going beyond that for the uses that are more likely and practical for a building of this type. It's a hulking building, 15,000 square foot, white elephant really is what it is. That the terminology we use, it's hard to release that unless it's a high-end user again. So that would be medical, which could be an urgent care or surgical facility, which is a need in town, especially if you have closures along the river due to storm. So that's a good need to have locally. A daycare facility, which is not permitted downtown technically, and there's several of them downtown, pre-existing non-conforming, but this is the perfect size. Like my son goes to a kiddie academy, that's the size of building that they use. And it's good parking, although they would need to create outdoor play area. That's an aside. That's something they can deal with at the site plan. Other uses include retail, which is already permitted. In a perfect world, we will find 3 uses to divide that store into 3 different spaces. That's unlikely, but it could still happen. We're not preventing that from happening. And I think it's really come down to those additional uses that are not permitted in CBD zoning, which is primarily the daycare and a range of medical uses, along with healthcare, supportive uses, gym types of uses, and so on and so forth. So the idea is that to use the overlay zoning, but in order to use the overlay zoning, you have to enter into redevelopment agreement, and that's when you kind of grab the ability to use the easement access. And we can also set design standards that we thought about, which primarily make sure the building still has a front door on Meriden. Because it's a, again, not much openness, and we got the best that we could get from about 15 years ago. It's a decent looking building for a Rite Aid in downtown. But the idea, since the parking's in the back, the fear that we have is they're going to turn their back to Meriden Avenue. So the idea is putting the design standards to require that front door access as well as visibility, and to not require but encourage the ability of taking the wings, maybe the first few feet of it, to put some smaller stores if there's appetite for it. Not going to require it because that might kill the project, but encourage them to maybe put smaller stores in front of the larger format. That's really basically comes down to it's really a zoning strategy. So this would be a very inexpensive plan to put together. It's sort of like a rezoning strategy to open it up to uses that are practical for this building type, as well as for the ability for the borough to maintain a streetscape vibe along the Meriden Avenue streetscape, as well as to get access from South 4th to South 3rd, just like we did at the Super Fresh site, require continuous access from South 5th to South 4th, which is great because you're not relying on Meriden Avenue frontage or driveways. So getting that secondary access without using Meriden Ave has been an important part of our redevelopment planning.
Only other thing I mentioned, because I know it's come up as important and to all of us here, and I'm sure those in town, the art windows that are there, we'll also make sure those are protected, and we make sure that that gets woven into any final plans for the site, because I know those are important. And the community bulletin board there as well. So the thing I should have mentioned earlier, that as Chris was talking, I realized I hadn't, was I had mentioned I've been talking with the property owner, and they've reiterated the uses that I said were kind of predominantly seeking out stores of this size, the Dollar General, Dollar Tree type options. And he has been approached by a couple of childcare uses, as well as medical, specifically kind of a surgery center type use. So there is some traction there, at least from the broker and his perspective, that they think this would actually facilitate leasing up of the property. So I just thought I should mention that as well. So that's pretty much, and I know some of this
We're
wasn't
gonna
used,
open this.
but yeah, I thought maybe it would be an opportunity to ask questions and talk it through a
Yes.
little bit.
Question, Jason?
And just to confirm, you say earlier that the way it's zoned right now, in terms of the likely uses of a property of this size, the options, the more realistic options would be something like a gym, a daycare, entertainment possibly, the medical use, or like a Dollar Tree or Dollar General.
Dollar Tree.
But the
Unfortunately, we don't get to
tree,
pick the chain.
that type of
Yeah.
business. And you'd also said that, the zoning wouldn't allow for most of those, but as of right now, like
Well,
Dollar
the
Tree. or
zoning
Dollar-
allows for
the
Dollar
Trees,
Trees.
that's what I was trying to confirm, like
Yeah,
that would
it's a
be.
all
It's
retail
permitted
uses are
use,
permitted.
retail.
If
is
a
permitted
Walgreens
use.
wanted to come in and fill that spot, they could
There
do
you
it
go.
as of right.
Right.
Just in terms of the more realistic ones that are likely to open up, like, so that's the one that they could do that as of right. So if we were to fail to act tonight, there's nothing that we could do to stop them from, like, just moving forward with that. They'd have no other option, so.
Well, that would be, or they could just let it sit there and do nothing. That's,
Right.
that's another fear I do have.
For the 2 years.
I'm certainly in favor of opening it up to these other options.
Noted. Matt?
I agree with Jason. I am too. I mean, I think this seems like a situation that could be right for a redevelopment plan. Particularly because you have an existing existing property owner. Who holds the liquor license there?
That is more of a clerk question. They do not. The property owner, I can tell you that. I
Got it.
know that. I believe that's in process. Rite Aid owned it and
Right.
may still own it, and it's in the process of being potentially bought and transferred, but I don't believe the property owner is in the mix.
The idea, like, I'm not crazy about pilots in general, abstractly, but since there's no alternative, and I think we've all looked, this does seem like a really good opportunity for an existing property holder. I have one more thing. Oh, what happened? I'm sorry.
No, go
Oh,
ahead. I have the
okay.
gavel. I'm holding on to it just in case.
No. I think this is a really great opportunity for an existing property holder in town to reinvest in a prized corner property. Something that's really meaningful to downtown in the future. I mean, this corner is an anchor. And I think if we have an opportunity to make something really wonderful out of it, and that benefits the square, then that's really good. And I just have one more question. What are some of the uses that we would like to see there that are not allowed there?
So the main ones I would suggest, if, based on my research, if we're comfortable with medical, like urgent care or any other kind of medical office, daycare type uses, and then things we've been talking
Fitness
about in the
centers.
CBD discussion were kind of, for example, the idea of a Yestercade-esque business is not currently permitted. So when I say entertainment use, that's kind of what I was referring to. There's probably a more precise way to refer to those uses. Chris, was that?
I use indoor recreation.
Indoor
facilities.
recreation facilities. I believe gyms are permitted.
I'll double check, but we'll make sure it's in there.
Yeah. So there are, but it was those primarily like for a use this size, like our CBD zoning is targeted at smaller, because most of our downtown is smaller storefronts. So a lot of those uses that are permitted probably wouldn't naturally lend themselves to the 15,000 square foot footprint. Restaurants are currently permitted throughout the zone, so that wouldn't be, but that hasn't emerged as a big opportunity, I think in part because of the conversion costs to doing so and the upsides or downsides and the lack of a liquor license.
So
right?
gyms are not. permitted
Oh,
in
they're
CBD,
not?
But we've been putting them into our downtown plans as a modern update use.
Thanks.
So that we carry.
That would be that would be an example of something that we would suggest including in the plan in terms of permitting. That's consistent with the other downtown plans we've done. We have them downtown very successfully. And it is one of the types of uses that I will tell you that they did not mention that as a potential use having been, they haven't been approached, but for all I know, they did. You know.
We're being proactive.
But I think we should, the more is better. Options are better than,
Right.
more options is better than fewer, in my opinion.
I think there's interest, you know, I think there's probably solicited interest at various points for that type of.
You might be right.
Yeah.
Mhm. And this site is unusual for our town, as you know, because it does have probably more parking than it needs for almost any conceivable use in that building. So it makes it attractive in that way. I hate to say that the parking is attractive, but it does for the end users. It is an attractive feature.
When it snows and you live there, yeah.
Councilmember Hill?
Just a couple clarifications. The designation that we're thinking about doing this, we're not contemplating a pilot necessarily for this, correct?
No, we cannot use it.
That's what I thought. I thought that we were prevented from using a pilot. So that's just to clarify that. And then the other thing is, I know you guys have been talking about expanding it throughout the CBD in terms of expanding the potential uses. Would this be just for this area, or would the expanded uses be in other areas? Is it just going to be in this particular zone?
So this redevelopment plan is only for the Rite Aid site, which is
Right.
good because we don't want to expand medical office ground floor everywhere.
Right.
But on that token, we are talking about that type of situation. Generally to the CBD, expanding uses generally all over the CBD,
Right.
to a certain extent, C zone, which is more upper Raritan,
Right.
Woodbridge. And we'd be talking about medical office too. Like, is there an issue with them on the ground floor? No, but not on the main drag,
Right.
those types. So we're having those conversations.
I only mentioned it because it was actually fortunate. We had already started kind of analyzing the permitted uses. And so when this issue came up about, you know, trying to find an end user that would fit a 15,000 square foot platform, that, you know, we already kind of knew where we had some gaps. And so, sorry if I confuse things by mentioning that analysis. We'll be coming back to you and the public with a more fleshed out proposal for the CBD zoning.
Soon.
Access.
I'll just wrap up and say I'm in favor of this. It's a really good option for us to do. I think it helps us work with this landlord and then shows others that we're ready to work with you and try and find the best solution. So I'm in favor of it as well.
Phil?
Just a couple of brief observations. One, the plan would clearly include as a benefit to the borough that we get the easement that would connect our lot with the other one. In connection with that, is it possible, especially if the new users, because of the scene, the site is basically overparked. And anybody who's been going there for many years knows some of the issues with the back parts of the parking lot where people roll their, you know,
Oh,
1975 Lincoln Continental apartments long term. There's a lot of other uses. And if you look at, I drove through it a couple of times in the last couple of weeks. And there's probably a good 15 or 20 cars that are parked there on a regular basis. Could we use perhaps our easement in connection with that side of the parking lot, which would be adjacent to the municipal lot where we do own the additional properties now as well, to broaden up public parking, or perhaps include a public parking piece to that, and as well as get the easement so that we can move forward with the South Third.
I
Plaza.
will talk with Joe about how that could potentially work, but I would say in my conversations, that was not something that would be very well. Like, I have been thinking about, if you're talking about that one section kind of that
Yes.
backs into our
Yes.
properties, potentially at least on Fridays, having use of it so that it can support
Mhm.
vendor parking, for example, for the farmer's market, and talking about that. They're very cautious about protecting future users of the property or their own redevelopment potential. And so to totally give over to public, I think might be a deal breaker, but we can certainly have that conversation. And I think there's a certain amount of reality, like it's gonna happen anyway. Like, I mean, to your point, one thing we did start looking at with arterial were if we're gonna connect through, when we connect through, how would we potentially lay out? And we actually would add additional spots by reconfiguring the parking in that, not our property area, if we can come to an agreement on that. So they would actually end up with more spots potentially with the improvements that we're proposing
Well,
on the
in
adjacent.
relation to that, I would really need to see what a plan for through traffic would be there. Because especially depending on the uses you put there.
Right.
Like a daycare with an express lane from Third to Fourth. Doesn't
Well-
seem to be extremely practical.
Well, but let me just say, we're with you on that, and we're trying to design it in a way that discourages the cut through feeling. It's got to jog so that it's not just a straight shot to Third
Like it
to
is
Fourth.
now, like you would.
So that
imagine.
so that's one of the ways, but those are all the things, like, you're right. And why Chris mentioned, when we look at whatever use comes up, if they're gonna be making changes, especially to the exterior, and if it was a daycare, they probably would have to, because they're gonna have to provide recreational space, then that goes to site plan.
Right.
It's gonna have to be a much more detailed proposal, and we'll all have to be convinced of its safety, to your point.
Well, I think there are a lot of different ways to negotiate something that allows us to use the parking in that particular section there. Unless and until redevelopment comes along.
Right.
Where you vacate, you don't necessarily have to take it in perpetuity. It's very easy to do.
Fair point. Mhm.
So I would like to see that included in the planning.
We
Because
can
the more
certainly
we,
reference it in the plan, for
the
sure.
more we
I would
get to,
recommend we encourage it
Yes.
and even
strongly.
reduce parking requirements so that if there is a shared parking, it
Mhm.
doesn't trigger a
Right.
need for the user to go back to the board to benefit the borough. So just more flexibility, be proactive.
yeah, because given the floor space on the prior usage, that there was always overparked. So I think there's room to do that. And-
Totally agree if we're talking about the existing building.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair point.
Okay, that was my concern. I do support it. I think we have enough vacancies and we don't need this one this big, and the opportunity to actually bring something in that's of service to residents, not just in a retail setting, I think is a real benefit.
I just have there's just a quick follow-up. So no pilots, so we're not discussing pilots.
We
Okay.
can't, because we don't have a redevelopment area.
So like for our economic development team, what other incentives, I guess, what other developer incentives are there?
The zoning.
The zoning, and then so are we thinking along the lines of potentially pairing them up with a developer? So because it sounds like the burden would be on, I mean, if the zoning is just the thing, how does that incentivize them financially, I guess?
By the types of the daycare uses, the medical uses are higher rent paying uses in general, like they just pay better rent. So that's part of the incentive to get them to participate and enter into our easement agreement. What I was trying to say before, which maybe got muddy by the way I delivered it, was they've explored the redevelopment potential for the site previously, and they, by their back of the envelope with the taxes, they were saying they would need a pilot in order to do a mixed use type of redevelopment with or without a development partner. And so without the redevelopment area designation, that's not even on the table.
So how does that work then, though? If they're gonna enter, if they decide to redevelop the site based on these potential parameters, wouldn't they have to have an operator in mind? In order to be incentivized, in order just to break ground on redevelopment in the first place?
Yeah, I
How does
guess-
that work?
I guess in this case, I would think of it as like what happened with Superfresh. It ended up being, we did a redevelopment plan. We did have the financial tools to
That's
incentivize
right.
the operator, but it was a rehab of the existing building. This one, they would need in order to enter into let's just assume it's going to be a rehab of the existing building for this part of my answer to your question. Then they would, to take advantage of the additional zoning overlay of these additional uses, we'd have to enter into it. They'd have to have an operator. They wouldn't bother to get into a redevelopment agreement with us unless they had an operator.
Right.
And then we would execute that redevelopment agreement
With the easement.
with the easement part attached to it.
Mhm.
And then they can move forward with their negotiations with their, lease agreement. If they're gonna make improvements to the inside of the building, and this is actually something that Chris was contemplating with Joe, do they have to go to the planning board if it's just a renovation of the building on the inside
The envelope.
or not? And we haven't answered that question. Right now, we're thinking no, but if it was a daycare where they're gonna be putting a playground or doing something, that would trigger some
Yes.
additional review by the planning board. But those are things we're trying to sort through with Joe to figure out. But basically, it's a zoning strategy using the redevelopment rehab area tool.
Sure.
And the other
Um,
part of it is that to be able to have the high value use that they're looking for, that we're providing through the redevelopment plan, it's basically a zoning strategy. Right now, if they were to do it, they would need a use variance and site plan. I mean, that alone is soft cost, like $50,000 to $100,000. It's just money that goes.
And you're just
putting it
hoping that
use.
the zoning board sees it your way.
In this case, we're being proactive. We'll allow it, and if you need to change your parking lot, then you go for your typical site plan. But if you don't, it's just change of occupancy, just get your building permits, but we still got the easement out of it. So it's adding flexibility, putting more money into building and improvements to the site.
That makes a lot of sense, and somehow I can't say I'm surprised that Highland Park's static zoning was commanded lower income users. That's not surprising. However, so how would that work then, though, if we change the zone? What I'm getting at is that if we have our fingerprints on this, we're gonna want to make it better than what we started with, right? So, and to me, that means a better use, than a dollar store or Surgery Center. So that's the incentive for me is that will this get a better operator in there for a long-term lease? Something like a daycare, it's the things that we think will bring more life to the downtown rather than just an office. And that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, I guess, the discussion we're having is, I guess, the types of uses, the ones that seem to be a higher value are some are medical. And I don't think we can be parse the zoning so specifically to say this kind of medical office, not just like I can't pick this Dollar Tree versus
Yeah,
this
I
Dollar
get that.
General.
I
So I
get
guess
that, but then what's the incentive for us to do this even further then? Now, if they can get their own operator in there,
they can't because they don't have the zoning.
but if they can get
Medical's not allowed under the current
Medical's not
zone.
allowed.
No.
Oh, okay.
The only thing that's currently allowed is stuff like retail, like say the Dollar Tree or something like that.
And even the
All the
medical
other,
offices
the
we have in
daycare,
town.
medical facilities and Planet Fitness or fitness centers not allowed currently.
So
So
that's,
these are the exceptions that would be made.
these are the kinds of things that we've been looking at, that if we think that they make sense for our downtown, it sounds like you're not in love with the medical use, and I get that. But that these are things that we could bring to the table to incentivize the refilling and the rehab of the building for that use, securing those windows more in perpetuity, because I think that's actually linked to the Rite Aid, not necessarily to the structure. So these are things that we can build into this plan so that if they want the benefit of those uses, then we make sure these things get negotiated in. And so it kind of this is a much more refined tool than trying to figure out a zone, especially because we really think these additional uses are kind of that we're proposing, with the exception of maybe indoor recreational uses, which I think could be probably throughout the downtown potentially. But I would specifically say the medical and the daycare uses, I wouldn't suggest we just permit them all over the place. A, there's not a really good spot, and B, that's not something we want to see over and over again downtown. And it also, the plan allows us to make sure we reaffirm the importance of that front entrance and some other things to just really drive home that this is, regardless of whatever is in that building, the front is the front and it feels like the front.
So we can't rule out a movie theater then, right?
No, it would be a
Yeah.
permitted use. I would call that indoor entertainment right there. So for sure, but again, they don't tend to make money for operators.
Oh, yeah.
They'll laugh and laugh.
Just saying great uses for that. space.
Yeah, I totally hear you, but
Thank
yeah,
you.
so
Thank-
that,
no,
hopefully
thank
that
you.
makes it.
I just-
So
I didn't
really,
get
the
that.
zoning is the tool we have to
Yeah.
hopefully leverage a new use of the building more quickly and to get our easement addressed in a more expedited way. We have explored other options for the easement and we are gonna be considering those as well. But this to us was the most collaborative and probably win-win approach to the easement as well as to, you know, while, you know, do I think that building's perfect? No. Would I love to see redevelopment there one day? This doesn't preclude that redevelopment in 15 years, but it would be nice to have a stable tenant on anchoring that corner for us.
Yeah.
And just to
Um,
share with you a few, maybe about a year ago, when we were talking to the property owner, they were talking about that they're interested in doing some redevelopment, but
Right, right.
it's not now,
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's in the future.
gotcha. My only and last thought is the liquor license. I don't know if there's a there, but I'm not sure if that's something that can. Wherever that lands, I mean, somebody's going to appreciate, you know, having that, and I don't know I don't know who's gonna acquire it, or if Rite Aid is gonna sell it, or what happens there.
I have
From
been
what
trying
I've
to check.
gathered, the liquor license is not, it's a package license, it's not a pour license.
Right, okay.
So
Right,
it
right.
doesn't help a restaurant. for
Right, at all.
example. It's it's a liquor store.
Right, yeah.
license. So,
Unless you want another liquor store.
right, which, you know, we had one, we could have another one, you know, the Rite Aid had it, I presumably successful one in the back there. So yes, and I have been trying to track, but it's hard. It's all done in ABC land, which is not easy to get your hands on, but I have been in touch with the property owner who has not expressed that they've been in the mix on that. Mainly because I think the end users that they're looking at don't need one.
Thank you. No, I support.
Stephanie, you had a question?
Yeah, what, since we're exploring urgent care, what would be, well, I guess I would say, what are the permitted hours that's allowed there now for urgent care? Would that be normal operating hours or?
Chris, I'm not as familiar with how specific we are with,
Pre-pandemic, what was the hours of the Rite Aid?
24.
well, they've been 24 sometimes.
Yeah.
Most urgent cares, I'll just say, tend to be till 8-ish, you know,
10
8
o'clock
to
at night,
8 or
yeah.
something, 7 to 8,
Mhm.
7 AM to 8 PM, which I would imagine. Do we typically, Chris, I know some uses, we do have kind of hours of operation. I just don't know
Yeah,
downtown.
Plenary beverage sales.
But that's a lot, largely, you know,
Yeah, that's-
we've had that conversation. Let's not do
Yeah.
that one now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why it's in your ordinance only for that use.
Yeah.
I don't think we have been restricting hours. on
No,
that use.
it's just, I think personally, the
That's
reason
what
I
I would-
like an urgent care over a medical center is I think they would have later hours and add a little more dynamism to the downtown, people coming and going, you know,
That's a good point.
later at night versus a typical medical office, which might close around 6,
That's a good point.
you know?
I agree. That makes sense.
And similarly, why I would prefer an urgent care over a daycare, because again, we know they don't stay open super late either. And they tend to be, by necessity, a little more walled off because they're protecting children and they have to have a lot more security and things like that.
Mhm.
So there are things we have to manage, but I think the reason I'm pretty comfortable with the Rite Aid building being repurposed into these, the Rite Aid building reads like it's closed off to me anyway. Like, even though it has a front door, it's not a particularly welcoming, inviting building, you know, it is what it is. And I do agree, it is a better Rite Aid than many I've been in. But, you know, so I don't think we're losing anything, you know, could it be way better? 100%. But I think, you know, those uses can work in that frame. And I think the hours of operation from a downtown perspective, more is always better. Having lights on, activity, things like that is a plus, just for everybody who is open at night downtown.
Safety.
Yeah.
Yeah, so-
100%.
So
Let's go back
I
to
mean,
Stephanie, yeah.
I mean, I guess they can have their, I guess, security lights or so that they would leave on in case there's an intruder or whatever, police have to look in. So I would prefer to see a daycare there than a medical use. We have almost every field of healthcare in town right now, from pediatrician to eye doctor to dentist to chiropractor. And then the way, like we just heard, you know, our, I guess on the federal level with all the vaccine mandates, where we're going with that. I just think, yeah, where we're not going. And then with us, the borough purchasing Yellow Brick Road, you know, if any business operator that's here, if they, you know, study the town and just call around a few daycares, they will know there's 3 to 6 month waiting list. So I think that a daycare is the lifespan of a daycare here in town is, I see it going much further than a urgent care. And that's why I asked about the hours, because doctor's office normally will have a few late hours throughout the week where they will stay till almost 7 o'clock at night, where we have an urgent care that's only open to additional hour. That's, you know, most people come in urgent cares, need some kind of medical form filled out or so.
Or you broke a leg.
Well, I'm going to Robert Wood for that.
Very extreme.
And
I guess, can I just cut you off for 1 second? I'm sorry, but like, we're trying to present kind of a suite of options, just like we do with zoning in general. You know, we all have things that we would prefer
Mhm,
over others.
mhm.
You know, so I guess, are you saying you're not supportive of
I think
including
she's
medical
advocating
uses?
for a daycare.
Yeah, that's good to, and I'll
But we're
definitely
saying
relay
that we're looking at all options. We're saying we're looking at all options, not just to pigeonhole ourselves into one. So it could be medical, it could be fitness, it could be retail use, and it could be daycare.
Yeah, I know, but I'm versus that. We no longer have Yellow Brick Road here. So we never had an urgent care. So what I'm saying, all of those parents and families were displaced. Also with the families we're trying to attract here. We're not trying to attract empty nesters. We're trying to attract people that are trying to expand their family, and we want them to stay here, or they're inherited a home. This is the service that we're trying here. I get urgent care as well too, in the square mile radius, how many, I mean, Robert Wood Johnson, we can walk to at this point, but I mean, urgent care is on the list, but it's not in my top 10. It's at
Gotcha.
10.
So if I hear you correctly, you're saying that your priority at this moment would be, from a list of 1 to 4 that we
Mhm.
have, a daycare would be your priority.
Yeah,
And then,
I
but
just
you're
wanna-
not excluding all the other options.
I'm not excluding because
Okay.
I don't want it empty, haunted house
There you go.
theme,
Oh, okay,
spirit,
as long as you're
spirit
on that page.
Halloween, one of those. I don't want that to
Secretly
come
rooting
there.
for a temporary
But,
spirit. just
Yeah,
for this year.
temporary spirit would have been nice, but
This month, everyone wants to speak.
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, so I just wanted to say that.
Gotcha, sorry, Stephanie. I didn't
Understood.
understand.
So your answer is yes to the 4 options that we have on the table,
Yes,
but your highest priority is daycare.
yes.
Just want to make sure.
I was just gonna say that I think that the best thing is the
Keeping
biggest suite of
notes.
options. And I would just make an argument that, and it's not an argument, because daycare is great, but I also think there's a real value of having an urgent care over a surgery center, but urgent care. And I know we can't pick and choose, and I know we're going with the broadest option as possible. I do think an urgent care, especially one that even if it is open late, that's where, you know, your kid wakes up with 103 fever, you take him to the urgent care. And I think that there's a interaction that can be really valuable to folks with an urgent care. I just wanted to throw that out.
Okay. And Norma?
Yeah, I mean, I understand what Council President Stephanie's saying regarding the priorities of the neighborhood. That's a very good point. That if we are going to be doing redevelopment, families are going to be moving, there are going to be a lot of kids, but I also understand that it's not really necessarily our choice as to what business is actually gonna open up. We're just expanding the options the owner of the property has. But I was thinking in terms of the urgent care center, which again, I don't have a particular preference, but I would like to just have a business and something going in there that's gonna benefit as many people in town as possible, whatever that may be. But if we do have an urgent care center, we do have 2 pharmacies in town that will actually benefit from having an urgent care center. You know, somebody's going into the doctor, they're coming out with that prescription. There's literally a pharmacy that's gonna be opening up across the street. So something like that can possibly piggyback, you know,
You get multiple uses.
you get multiple uses because people are gonna come out and they're gonna need something, right? They're gonna need something from the pharmacy. And they may have a pharmacy of choice, but it's across the street, it's down the block, maybe on the way home, pick it up at Unite, pick it up at the pharmacy. That's what I was thinking about, that maybe it might expand the economy. Yeah,
Opportunities.
exactly, expand opportunities. That's all.
So with that in mind, what's your,
I am in support of all 4 options. Yeah.
taking notes? Okay.
Sorry.
Attorney?
If I may just, it's just a simple question, only because everyone's kind of danced around it in different fashions. So like with the medical, for example, we've talked about wanting an urgent care, maybe not so much like a surgical center. So as we talk about like all 4 options on the table, expanding to medical, you know, within those, you can have some restrictions. So it's something, and I'm not making any suggestions now, it's just something to kind of consider before you actually move forward. So if your thought was, I like medical in the sense of I like a doctor's office, I like an urgent care, I do not want a surgical center because I think that that's too specific. That's something that we may want to look at to see if it's something that we can maybe expand it a little bit, but not so much, if that's the direction that the council wants to go. But in doing so, the first thing that you're trying to resolve is trying to cast as wide a net as possible to get as many applicants. So and that's the only reason I'm just throwing it out there is that you do have an ability to kind of get a little bit more micro on this, but the more micro you get, the less ability you're going to
Less
have to
opportunities.
have the owner fill the building,
Mhm.
is I guess my point.
We will have that control in some way through the redevelopment agreement, because in order to get those expanded uses, if it's under the umbrella medical office, you have to, the redeveloper or landlord or the property owner has to enter a redevelopment agreement with the borough. So you have that last moment of going, we like that medical office, but I discussed it internally, I don't want surgical. You still have that last line of defense in a way before they enter an agreement.
Let me
Otherwise, the plan should be more broad.
I have a quick question. Why is, I'll get to you in a minute too. Why is there not an opening for surgical centers? I'm just asking my colleagues. Oh, yeah. You gonna answer the question? Okay.
I think a surgical center is a fine use. If we're talking about preferences and little preferences, I think that the urgent care would probably have a broader reach within the community because everybody gets cuts and scrapes, not everybody goes to surgery. And then in terms of hours, it seems to me that an urgent care, all the ones I go to are open till 9 or 10. So there's a little bit more churn. So
Yeah.
that's my preference. It's not that I'm against a surgical center. It's not that I think it's. a
I
bad
just wanted
use.
us to throw that out there. You what you were thinking.
May I mention one thing about
Sure.
surgery? Because there was a surgery center that was interested in the spot, so I asked for a little more flavor. One of the things that attracted me to that you may like to know is that they have probably about 70 employees, not all at the same time on the same day.
Right,
And
right.
they're
Wow.
a high level staff going
That's
to
important.
lunch.
That's the
going
stuff that we
to
need
that
to know
before.
about.
No,
but
Not
I would,
today.
well, it wasn't clear. I didn't
She
hear
said
it.
that,
Yeah.
she said that before.
Yeah, I probably wasn't there.
Yeah.
I'm not
So-
saying you didn't say it.
No,
That was just really
I
good.
did not say it tonight, so that to be fair.
No,
But that's,
previous
so
meetings.
there's, as you can see, you can go back, there's pros and cons. And I guess
That's why
my
I brought
personal
that up.
bias is
Yeah.
very much like sometime, and then some of it is gonna be what brings the best market, to bear. Like some of it, we don't, you don't wanna control too much because you don't know what you're gonna be giving up as a result, like by,
Mhm.
to Aaron's point, narrowing the field too far. Oh, well, we want something that's open this late, but wow, I never thought about the fact that at peak midday, they're gonna have 40 employees in that building, or 30 or whatever it is, eating in town, going on their lunch breaks.
And that's noticeable. That's the kind of stuff we need to
Uh,
notice.
Everybody's brown.
Now, so
Yeah.
there's just.
You're in the queue.
I'm sorry.
Okay, Stephanie?
You're on hold for 5 minutes. Whatever, forgot my thought. Yes, okay, so I like what Erin said, obviously, but I think also if we're just trying, like he said, casting a wide net, we're opening the floodgates as well too. And at that point, but I didn't know that we still have a final say to kind of what really, I mean, to some
Through the
point.
redevelopment agreement.
Okay, so.
But I don't want to have, I don't think we want
Right,
to.
if we said no at that point.
I don't think I could
that-
go like, no, I don't like that store. I like this.
Not
store,
that
That's
you know,
store,
like-
but when you say medical has so many subcategories.
Well, I guess it'd be
that-
helpful to know which ones concern you.
Right, yeah.
I do think if there's stuff that we don't want, we should
Yeah,
probably
'cause
say
to
it,
me-
because I don't
Right.
think we can
That's
do
kind
it
of
at
where I
the
was going.
11th.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah.
think we don't, personally think that would be helpful to know. Like, I can't think of one off the top of my head that I'm like.
Cosmetic Surgery
particularly-
Center.
Like, go for it. Like, I don't see a distinction between that
Yeah.
versus something else. So if there was like a noxious kind of medical use that we were concerned about,
I know.
I don't know.
I can't think of it, but I think, to me, that's where, you know, you could get into dangerous territory trying to overly parse things out, you know, you can control for concerns that you might have about, to me, it's more like how the building functions and feels and fits in. Those are the zoning parameters I'm more interested in, and then the uses, as long as they fit within the general envelope we set,
Mhm.
you know, that's fair, you know? That was gonna be our approach, but if there was a use that comes to mind that I didn't think about, that I would love to know. It didn't occur to us, I'll be honest, and we're just like, it's kind of a medical office, you're going in there, you're getting some sort of a medical attention or procedure. You know, those are the general, kind of what we were thinking.
Yeah, if you don't want medical offices, like a traditional pediatrician's office or whatever, then we could just clarify specialized medical office care, such as, then we can list urgent care, surgical facilities, stuff like that. But if you have a preference of certain types of use you don't want, we need to know now. But otherwise, I would recommend keeping it broad, cast the wide net.
No, Matt, you're done? Jason?
Okay, just to your
No,
question.
you jumped then.
And just to your question earlier, I just wanted to say out and on the record that I am perfectly comfortable and fine with the surgical center. I may have different preferences of what should go there. I'm sure my preferences are great and really cool, but I'm in favor of keeping it broad.
I am also.
Okay, great.
I am too, and less of a question, more of a comment. My, like Rite Aids, you know, all over the state, we're gonna have like, you know, dozens of new stores that look like Rite Aid still, because that's what the buildings look like. I know it's ridiculous. And so I think we would probably all be interested in, like, whatever happens there, if it can look like something that belongs in the downtown for the long term. You know, no matter what, even if it, obviously it has to have a certain functional design, depending on what it is. But if it doesn't have to be, if it can just fit into the streetscape, you know, because it's a redevelopment plan, if it can kind of look. So, because eventually there's gonna be something else in there. And
Agree, and
Yeah.
we were talking about, you know, not that we don't have too much to incentivize it, but let's say
I know.
the doctor's office didn't need the full 15,000. Well, wouldn't it be nice but if it was permitted, they could maybe carve one piece out and do a smaller retail footprint, you know, those would be all permitted in this plan, you know, and frankly, called out as desirable. Because again, more activation on that front, I think would be, to your point, I think the reason it doesn't fit is it doesn't quite breathe like the rest of
Right.
the frontage downtown.
There's the
Um,
Rite Aid.
But, you know, there's gonna be a limit to what we can make them do with the tools we've got to bring to bear on the situation. But we can certainly, you know, especially as they design, they're gonna have to put this new sign, they're gonna have to do some modification to the front, you know, as what, you know, unless they're.
We'll encourage them to carve out small spaces. We did that in Metuchen where the store is literally 8 feet deep. And it's like a maker space. They call it Spark for the
Oh, yeah.
special improvement.
That's nice.
So we created that because the office space behind it couldn't be on Main Street. So I was thinking of bringing that here. Say, we're allowed to do it. It doesn't need to be that big. Just tell the landlord that.
Think about it, like if they don't need the full frontage, maybe you want to think of an approach like this. So we're gonna try to be creative about it, but recognizing that the odds are the end user is going to utilize most of the space and convert it and, okay.
Any additional questions? on this?
So final, so the categories is healthcare, daycare, that we're making an exception for. Those are the two that we're. making-
Indoor,
Medical use,
And, oh,
daycare
yeah,
use, fitness centers.
Entertainment, indoor
Mhm.
entertainment, right?
and gyms.
The fitness centers.
Yeah, so, yeah, they, all three, I mean, even daycare, like, is that also adult daycare? Is that also? Like, what is, like, that's why when we're opening this up and something comes there that we don't.
I was
like,
considering
or-
childcare, but. that
I was thinking childcare
I-
myself because we pretty much have
But
adult
what
daycare
you
right here.
don't, but when you don't put it in, written down on, it's up left to the mind to wonder, and, oh, I thought that was permitted.
Oh, I think we've been talking about child daycare, but do you, just so we're clear, do you not want adult daycare?
No, I'm just saying that we're just putting open, it's so open that it's anything, we have to define these three categories. Even before you said indoor, like indoor entertainment, I guess, okay, that's different, but these three categories, like defining them just a little parameters around it. I don't know if Aaron, I know you had suggested that.
What
I don't know
I
if you-
thought Phil had his hand up too. I don't know if he had a genius.
I don't think we want to, from what I would suggest that we don't lock ourselves into any particular thing. Because when we were talking about daycare, we were talking about Yellow Brick Road being closing. I think we were talking about child daycare. And the medical use could be expanded out to see what the person who's coming in. The permitted use currently is retail, so like a Donald Tree or any one of those could be in there. And we're looking at looking at fitness centers as a possible that we will
So-
include into this.
Okay, so that is actually child daycare.
Child daycare, because
So that's what
I
we're
strongly
gonna say.
believe we have an adult daycare right in back of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we have to
And people come from all over and use it.
And this big.
Yeah, but we have to remember the landlord is just going, he's gonna, well, essentially, he's gonna go with the highest bidder, so
Well,
that's why. I'm
generally
saying.
speaking, the medical are the higher
Bitter.
users, value, end users. Daycares depends on which one.
Yes,
It depends
Yes.
on the, you know, the
the clientele
cachet
that they're gonna get.
Of that. So I don't think a Yellow Brick Road price point is gonna go there.
No.
Just because, like, I afforded Yellow Brick Road, so I know what that was. And that is much more of a value, you know, lower price point than some of these other kinds of
Mhm,
centers.
mhm.
So some of that is gonna be dictated by the cost of renovation and the lease terms. You know, there's gonna be a limit. So.
But, okay, I mean, I could be, but I know I guess in my world, when I close loans, if it's not in there, then it just didn't happen and you just leave it so open.
Zoning is its own art form. It really is.
Yeah.
It is what, and you can be as specific as you want, Stephanie. And the flip side of that is you were so specific,
You lock
you've
yourself out.
excluded something you
Exactly.
want.
No, well,
That
then
inadvertently.
we would be here again and say, hey. he
And then we
has
have to
this,
amend
like,
it, goes to the
amend it,
planning
yeah.
board. It's like
And
5
time
meetings.
is,
Yeah.
time is always.
And there's the Edison, and that's our loss.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I imagine though, like anything that any interest that they have, it's gonna be vetted by the EA.
They're gonna come. to
Economic
We're
us.
gonna come
development.
back and
They're
we're
not-
gonna
they're
hear
wanna
it.
know it
Right.
fits, like, we have an
And
open
then you're like, what do you think
relationship.
about this?
Yeah, and that has been the case.
Yeah, the
That
owner
has been
has
nice.
been,
Right.
yeah, that's the.
So that gives me a little more.
A
Yeah.
question was
Yeah.
asked about the liquor license. Although I know it's a poor license, it could go to a liquor.
It's not a poor license.
It's not a poor license. It's a package license.
Right.
And the question was asked, are we interested in a package license? I was like, I don't think so, because we have enough liquor store in town.
Huh?
The question.
It's out there.
It
It's
is a
out there.
package license.
It
There's
is a
already-
package license. It is on the market.
Yes,
Right.
it's
but
on the market for sale.
The question is, are we? can
We
buy
the
it?
borough.
Can the borough
Retire.
buy it?
don't
Can the
have
borough
to.
buy it?
We can
Why
retire.
would we want to pay a lot of money to have?
Yeah.
I
A poor
I don't-
license.
I don't really want to go down the road of why. I want to know if that's right now.
The
So-
senior center?
Technically, yeah. I think more, you also, by the way, have some ability to approve transfers of those licenses too. So, but it does get a little wonky because if the borough doesn't want to, they can go to ABC to appeal it or whatever. So it becomes very difficult. If it's that you want to purchase, the problem is that you're not going by the rate that you sold the license to them. You'd be going by the market rate to then take it back. And then secondarily, then it becomes an asset that you've spent money on that. I mean, you would be effectively taking it in to either reissue it to someone else at a complete loss, or you'd be taking it in to just not allow it back out into the market. So it's something you can do, but I just, there's pros and cons to doing it.
And remember, Governor Murphy 2 years ago was looking at this universal liquor licenses for smaller business and stuff like that. So it might be a loss to.
There was an
Is it
expansion on
something
some
like that?
liquor
Yes.
licenses, and then there were restrictions put on pocket licenses. So
Mhm.
they expanded, but now if the municipality has issued more licenses than what it's technically supposed to have issued, and one of them is a pocket license, when that pocket license expires, it just disappears forever. So that's the other caveat to that, is that if it expires and it goes away and it's beyond that, it's like it wasn't there anymore. It's just gone.
Is that, anybody, is that an asset to the borough or?
No, so if let's say the borough is allocated 15 licenses, but you have 20 out there right now.
It's called, we have 6.
Yeah, so but I'm just using round numbers, right?
Just
So
so the public is aware.
you take those, the licenses that are over your allocated limit. If those become pocket licenses, they'll expire after a certain amount of point. So if you're over the limit, when they expire, they just take you back down to your maximum, but you can't ever go back above your max. If you're below your maximum and the pocket license expires, it then transfers back to the municipality. And now that it becomes yours to then reissue to another person. So we're trying to amend the ABC laws, but as you can imagine, there are a lot of liquor licenses that people spent
Yes.
multi-millions of dollars
Yes.
to procure.
And that's why they were so upset.
Yeah, so it's hard to unwind all that.
Mhm. Any additional questions? We're all good? Okay, now it's time for public comment.
Oh, no, we have.
Yeah,
another-
two.
Oh,
bullet number
420.
2.
oh,
This is a
so,
quick one, I
oh,
promise.
I'm sorry. Oh, it's all in. Okay, 420 to 424 redevelopment plan amendment.
Just real quick, I'll turn it to Chris in a minute, but just to remind everybody, because Chris reminded me, you authorized an amendment to 420, 424 redevelopment plan, which was what is now the super fresh plan, as I would call it, a number of years ago, to basically take the zoning that we developed, the alternatives for Raritan Avenue, and bring that across the frontage, because when we did the area needs study, we actually did study the entire
Yes.
basically block from the super fresh forward. So we just want to pick that, and it was mainly because Chris was here. Anyway, I wanted him just to kind of remind you guys what that project is and what he's been working on. So with that.
It's really a matter of efficiency, since I'm working on this redevelopment plan for Rite Aid. Well, we'll take its permission to do so. That prior redevelopment plan for the now super fresh site, extend the zoning, use efficiency, the workload I'm doing to prepare the zoning standards for that project. So, but in terms of the actual redevelopment plan, so yes, as Terry mentioned, we did the area needs study, non-condemnation, I believe, for the 4 buildings on the 400 block of Raritan Avenue, which includes what was Wells Fargo, the Parktown Center with all the businesses there, 6 of them, the Stop and Shop site, and the corner landmark building. But we only did a redevelopment plan because we were in a rush to try to get the store
Right.
access. Then we thought about, well, we should think about expanding the zoning, which was basically allow for 4-story, maybe a 5th-story step back. That sort of strategy with infill building along the street and sort of extend that to the rest of the block. But at that time, Wells Fargo was, I think, going through a new tenant. So we didn't really lose the opportunity, but the idea of finishing that plan was less important.
It went back burner just because the property
And
was.
then track C happened, track A. And since we're touching Rite Aid, it's like, well, I said the other plan, might as well finish it.
And we
Same.
literally, I looked at how much we've spent, he's literally halfway through doing it. So I figure might as well bring it back to everybody's attention. We do think it's good because we don't want to wait till the next change in tenancy, and then we're scrambling to establish the zoning parameters for that. But basically it's a similar approach to how kind of
more expansive land uses, a little bit more generous bulk standards, but within reason.
But we will not be including these additional use, at least the medical and the
Correct.
daycare uses.
That discussion is only for Rite Aid because that's suitable for the Rite
For
Aid
that,
site.
for that site that big.
So two birds with one stone.
So you'll get a chance to look at that plan when he's done drafting it, but I just wanted to remind everybody we were working on it.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
No, that's awesome. Totally support. But since we're talking about it, I don't know if there's a chance to revisit the owners to see if there's something we can do along the frontage of the
I have been
sidewalk.
talking with them.
Yay,
It's
thank
just
you,
gonna
Terry.
take a little
Ongoing
time.
conversation.
Thank
It's a
you.
little bit of a haggle between the property owner and the super fresh and
Right.
but I know they reached out, I had talked to them and they had reached out to the property owner because the property owner called me, so I was like, oh, good, they actually
That's awesome.
followed up. So it may take a little time and it may come in phases, but we are still working. on it.
Just for those keeping score at home, we don't like the cars facing right at the sidewalk. We want to create.
It
and
may
that was
not be
part
the
of
whole frontage, but
redevelopment,
at least
right.
if we can carve out some of that
Yeah.
to make it a little more beautiful, maybe even get them a sign closer to the street. That was something we talked about in the plan. So these are all things we're talking about.
Yeah, awesome.
Are you talking about specifically like improvements along there or like actual building?
The plan allows right now for
remember.
actual buildings, so that's not, what we had also, if you remember, there were like three options. Option one was fix up the existing building, that's the option that ended up happening. And in that option, there was a dream, I should say, of a potential like rain garden along the frontage. I don't think that's practical at this point, but we did talk to them about other ways we could screen the parking
And
or
some
add
benches,
additional
planters.
planters, talking about things. I mean, I will say their landscaping is a little underwhelming, so I don't want to overpromise, but I think we can definitely get some additional things, and they were willing to talk about it. So
Did they express interest in landmark signage?
I want to talk to you about that separately, but
Okay.
potentially,
That's
yeah. And since we're looking at the plan, it would make
Mhm.
sense to, because I think it would be nice for them to have a little more
Mhm,
presence at the
mhm.
street because they
Mhm.
are so set back. And I think it would also encourage them to do the improvements we want in the front if as part of that, they were getting a sign.
If people can see them, yeah.
And they get a little more of a
Right,
monument
sure.
sign that has their brand on it, but then we get a little more of a strip. I think there'll still be some spots. I don't think they're gonna go all the way. And also closing the
Mhm.
out is something we really wanted, even if we just do it with planters was something that
Absolutely.
we're talking to them about. They were bucking on
It's an
that.
ongoing conversation.
I barely
it
see anybody
continue.
use it, I don't know why it's that big a deal, but anyway.
Just the-
But-
This is very exciting.
Exactly, so, but we should weave that into, since we're amending the plan anyway, we have to figure out how to, design those parameters for the sign.
Like a 1960s sign we saw decades ago.
Yeah, we're gonna go back to it.
Mid-century, it's a throwback. It's nice.
Yeah, but then you have to call it Edwards.
But it has to be on a big stick and it says food
It's gotta
town.
see it.
It was a food time,
Food town.
Town.
Food town.
but there was
Or
something,
that was it playtime?
there was food time. It was something
Food
before.
time, yes.
It was food time. I saw the old picture, that's why. Yeah, it has quite a history. And actually, the Rite Aid site, there was a grocery store at one point as well.
Right.
They were right
Mhm.
next to each other.
Mhm. All right, any additional
So
questions?
that's all we had. Oh, we do have,
Public.
Any additional questions? Nope.
I was about to pack up.
Anyone?
There are, and I do have a hands up, Mayor, so do you want to say your?
Okay, now it's time for public comment. 21 minutes, 3 minutes per speaker. Person online, please go ahead and speak.
Hold on, it looks
Identify
like
yourself.
I have to, Abby Stern Cardinal. I'm going to, hold on,
I thought in work session, we didn't get comments from the public.
we do,
No,
we
we
always
have
have to have
to.
open comment, yeah. Abby, can you just say something, make sure you're there?
Hi.
Hi.
So I have been listening to the meeting, very interesting. I wanted to give a little bit of feedback before you make your final decision about moving forward. I don't know when that's coming, but I wanted to make sure that you were able to hear a little bit. So I understand that the best thing is a full suite of options, and I think you should give definitely some more options. I would like to make some comments about the daycare. I think my understanding was that Yellow Brick Road partially closed due to the expansion of the pre-K at the schools. And, we have a market for everything, and the market for daycares should be taken into effect or taken into account. Because daycares are struggling. I don't know that a daycare would be a long-term, even if one did come, would be a long-term tenant. The goal is for the pre-K expansion to continue in the school, and I hope that there's still conversations happening with that, with the Board of Education. So I really think that, if you're giving the full suite of options, I would ask you just not to include the daycare. I really don't think that it would be good for that reason. I also think that something that can serve the entire community and people can walk into, daycares have a lot of high security, and it's really important to keep them locked down. So when you're talking about keeping it open, keeping the door on Raritan kind of open to the public in a way, that's not going to be the case with a daycare. I think that spot does not serve the purpose of a daycare, let alone having to make an outdoor space. So if we're talking about kind of higher value people participating in the downtown, again, I don't think a daycare is bringing in as many people working. Let me see if I had other points. I would really like to see something that the entire community can use and walk into. I think there are some great options you discussed: a fitness center, definitely, urgent care, entertainment. I mean, that sounds amazing. For all of those reasons, I would ask that when you're putting the suite of options out there, that you don't include a daycare. I think it could be a big problem in terms of supply and demand in the town, and also having something that is sustainable long-term.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
Hold on one second. There are 3 people on, including Abby, but no other hands up.
Okay. May I have a motion to close public participation?
Mayor, somebody just popped their hand up. Shall I? Okay, sorry. Ellen Witt, if you could just identify yourself for us, please.
Hi, Ellen Witt, Highland Park. I'm just asking a quick question. I just want to confirm that the Immigrant Trust Act resolution could be on the agenda at the next meeting for a vote. Is that the plan?
Okay, that's a
Hello?
question. Do you have another question, Ellen?
Nope, that's the only one.
Okay. Any additional questions from member of the public?
I don't see any other hands up, Mayor.
Okay. May I have a motion to close public participation?
So moved.
Second,
Roll call?
Councilmember George,
yes.
Councilmember Hale,
Yes.
Councilmember Hirsch,
Yes.
Council President Kim Cho Han.
Yes.
Councilmember Pistonik,
Yes.
Councilmember Vargas.
Yes.
Just want to acknowledge that I heard both questions from Abby with her recommendation. As we move forward, we'll try to make the best decisions for the town and seeing who comes before us. As it pertains to Ellen's question, that will be on the agenda for October. Jason and his team, Human Relations Commission, will be working on that, and I believe that's going to be on the 21st agenda.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions from members of my group?
No
Nope.
questions.
Seeing none, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Great. Roll call.
Red Sox are up 2-1.
Okay. All right. Good night, all. Good night, all.
Have a great meeting. Thank you.
Sorry,
Yeah.
my pen ran out.
There you go.
I'm glad I got to hear
Yeah.
Tonight, it's on now.
Yeah.
It's on now.
Mayor Stephanie,
That's why I was like, I want to get out of here.
that was awesome. Thank you. That